A storm rolled over the city like a dark curtain being dragged across the sky, soaking the rooftop of the old film studio. Inside, where the air smelled of dust and forgotten dreams, a single script lay open on a wooden table. Its last page fluttered violently as though trying to escape. It was the only copy of a story said to hold the power to change the fate of whoever completed it, an unfinished screenplay known in the industry only by a whispered name, the last script. For years, no filmmaker dared to touch it. The legend said that the writer vanished the night he penned the final scene. But the story resurfaced unexpectedly when two names were engraved in gold across its cover: Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo, the only actors requested by the mysterious author. No one knew why. No one knew how. But the moment their names appeared, destiny began writing itself. The studio lights flickered. A cold wind slipped through the cracked windows. And then Xiao Zhan stepped into the room. His footsteps were soft but determined, echoing through the empty hall. His eyes, usually bright with warmth, carried a hint of gravity, as though he had seen the shadows hovering behind this project long before agreeing to it. He picked up the aged script, running his fingers slowly across the handwritten lines. That was when the door creaked open and Wang Yibo entered, helmet still in hand from a late-night ride, hair slightly windswept, eyes sharp and observant. The moment he saw Xiao Zhan, he smirked faintly. "So," Yibo said, leaning against the wall, "you came after all." Xiao Zhan lifted the script toward him. "Something about this. It feels like it called us." Wang Yibo stepped forward, his boots leaving faint prints on the dusty floor. "Let me guess. You felt it too. Like this thing isn't just a script." When their fingers brushed as both reached for the same page, the lights shattered overhead, exploding in a rain of sparks. The script glowed. A white flash swallowed the room. And everything changed. The two actors found themselves standing on the edge of a vast, abandoned city. Skyscrapers stood half-crumbled, vines growing from shattered windows. The air was a haunting silence broken only by the distant hum of something electric yet alive. "What is this?" Xiao Zhan whispered, spinning slowly as his breath fogged in the cold air. Wang Yibo crouched down, touching the ground, realizing it felt too real to be a set. "This isn't a location shoot. We're inside the script." A gust of wind swept past, carrying a whisper, an echoing voice that seemed to come from everywhere. "Finish the story, or be written out of it." Both men exchanged tense glances. There was no crew, no cameras, no director. Only them and a world built from the imagination of the missing writer. Yibo tightened his jacket. "All right. Let's find the end." The city shifted under their feet, streets reorganizing like a puzzle solving itself. A neon sign flickered above a diner in the distance. They approached cautiously, pushing the door open. Inside sat a single figure, hunched over a cup of untouched coffee. His face was hidden under a hood, but the moment they entered, he spoke without looking up. "You shouldn't have come." Xiao Zhan stepped forward. "Who are you?" The man finally lifted his head, revealing hollow, ink-black eyes. "I'm what's left of the writer." Wang Yibo's jaw tightened. "What happened to you?" The writer gestured toward a wall covered in moving words, sentences forming and erasing themselves. "The script trapped me. Feeds on imagination, consumes creativity. It needs two souls strong enough to finish it without losing themselves." The wall shifted again, this time revealing scenes like flickering holograms, battlefields, love stories, betrayals, explosions of color and emotion. All stories woven from fragments of their past roles. Xiao Zhan felt a pulse of fear. "Why us?" The writer smiled, but it was a smile born from madness. "Because your bond is the only thing strong enough to hold the world together." Before either man could respond, the diner windows shattered as shadow-like creatures burst inside. Figures made of twisted ink and broken lines, the remnants of unfinished characters. Wang Yibo grabbed Xiao Zhan's arm and pulled him back. "Run!" They sprinted into the night as the creatures chased them, screeching like torn paper. The city twisted again, creating a bridge over a dark river where pages floated like boats. Xiao Zhan stumbled, but Yibo caught him just in time, gripping tightly. Don't fall. If you touch the water, the script rewrites you. They crossed the bridge, hearts pounding. But the moment they reached the other side, a new scene formed. Bright lights, red curtains, an empty theater. Rows of seats stretched endlessly, each occupied by faceless silhouettes who clapped rhythmically, slow and hollow. A spotlight clicked on, illuminating the stage. On it stood a version of Xiao Zhan, identical, except his eyes were the same ink-black void as the writer's. He held a script dripping with shadows. "Welcome," Dark Xiao Zhan said. "You've reached the climax." Real Xiao Zhan stared at his double. "You're not me." "No," the shadow replied. "I am who you become if the script consumes you." Wang Yibo stepped protectively in front of him. "Over my dead." Dark Xiao Zhan flicked his wrist. Shadow chains shot out, wrapping around Wang Yibo and lifting him into the air. "Yibo!" Xiao Zhan shouted, struggling against invisible force. The theater shook violently, the faceless audience chanting, "Finish the story. Finish the story." Xiao Zhan dropped to his knees, gripping his head as visions flooded him. Every scene he ever acted, every emotion amplified. The script was trying to write him. But then he heard a voice. "Xiao Zhan, don't let it win." Wang Yibo, even chained, was fighting to remain conscious. His voice was weak but steady. "You're stronger than a script. You always were." Something ignited inside Xiao Zhan, a fire he didn't know he carried. He surged to his feet, grabbing the chains with both hands. The shadows burned away at his touch. The dark double stepped back. "This wasn't in the script." "That's because we're writing a new ending," Xiao Zhan said firmly. Wang Yibo dropped to the ground, gasping for breath but grinning. "Now that's the Xiao Zhan I know." The two stood side by side, facing the dark version. The theater trembled as the faceless audience began to disintegrate, their applause turning into screams. Xiao Zhan took a step forward. "This story isn't yours." Wang Yibo mirrored him. "It's ours." The script above them burst into flames, white flames that spun into a spiral of light. The entire world collapsed around them, but instead of fear, they felt freedom. Dark Xiao Zhan tried to speak, but his voice dissolved like melting ink. The final sentence appeared in the air. "Only truth can finish the last script." A final flash swallowed the theater. And suddenly, they were back in the old studio. The script lay on the table, no longer glowing, its last page finally written. Outside, the storm had passed. Soft morning light filtered in through the dusty blinds. Wang Yibo exhaled slowly. Did we just survive a script?" Xiao Zhan laughed breathlessly, leaning against the table. "Let's never accept mysterious projects again." Yet the moment their vision cleared, they were no longer in the dusty old studio. The transformation was so abrupt, so violently dreamlike, that their bodies needed a minute to adjust. The air felt cold and slightly metallic, like a breath drawn inside a forgotten machine. Xiao Zhan blinked rapidly, turning in slow circles. Towering skyscrapers stretched above them, but unlike the glass giants of modern cities, these buildings seemed half alive, walls pulsing faintly as though veins ran through them. Neon lights flickered erratically, every color distorted and blending like unfinished brush strokes left in chaos. "What is this place?" Xiao Zhan breathed, his voice nearly swallowed by the endless emptiness. Wang Yibo crouched down and touched the asphalt beneath them. It wasn't asphalt at all, more like tightly packed parchment, the ground covered with faint lines of text that moved under his hand as though they had their own heartbeat. "It's the script," Yibo murmured. "We're standing inside it." Before Xiao Zhan could respond, a low rumble echoed across the city, deep and resonant, like thunder trapped underground. The sky above them darkened, not by clouds but by swirling ink. Rivers of black ink twisted across the heavens, shifting and forming shapes that didn't quite hold. A warning. Countdown. Presence. Xiao Zhan stepped closer to Yibo. Someone wrote this world. Someone powerful. Or something, Yibo corrected, standing and dusting off his hands. And whatever it is, it knows we're here. They started walking through the eerie streets, every footstep echoing like a whisper. Despite the massive size of the city, there were no crowds, no cars, no life. Just them. And yet the silence felt too intentional, like the world was holding its breath. A street lamp flickered ahead, struggling to stay lit. Beneath it was a small object resting on the ground. Notebook. Wang Yibo reached it first, cautiously picking it up. Its pages were filled with tightly scribbled handwriting. But the last page was torn, ripped violently from the binding. Xiao Zhan leaned in to read. The final complete sentence said, "When the two chosen arrive, the city will awaken." Ba shut the notebook quickly. "I don't like this." A sudden sound snapped their attention. Metal scraping stone. Then again. Then louder. A shadow stretched across the building beside them, long and distorted. It moved unnaturally, crawling along the wall without a source. Then the sound grew into a roar that rattled the windows around them. Something was coming. Ba grabbed Xiao Zhan's arm. "Run. Now." They bolted down the fragmented street, dodging falling debris as the buildings trembled. Behind them, the street split open as a colossal creature burst from the ground, its body a swirling vortex of ink, its face shifting between masks of unfinished characters. It screamed, a shattering sound that made the air ripple. Xiao Zhan nearly fell, but Yibo caught him, pulling him close and steadying him. "Keep going," Ba shouted. They sprinted between collapsing towers, heartbeats pounding in sync with the trembling world. The ink creature lunged, its tendrils slashing through the ground, leaving trails of dissolving words in its wake. One tendril narrowly missed Xiao Zhan, slicing through his sleeve like a razor. He didn't stop running. They darted into an alley, which immediately twisted and morphed, walls shifting as though the script was rearranging itself, trying to trap them. "This thing doesn't want us to escape," Xiao Zhan said breathlessly. "No," Yibo corrected, glancing behind them as the shadows thickened. "It wants us to finish the story. On its terms." The alley twisted again, opening into a massive courtyard. In the center stood a giant fountain, not of water but of floating text, sentences spilling upward like liquid light, forming and dissolving again. It was mesmerizing, calming even, and for a moment Xiao Zhan felt drawn to it. But the moment he reached toward the glowing words, the fountain reacted violently. The text reformed into hands, dozens of them, reaching for his wrist. Yibo grabbed him and yanked him away just in time. "Don't touch anything that glows. New rule." Before Xiao Zhan could reply, the ink creature burst through the courtyard wall, launching a massive wave of darkness toward them. They ran again until they reached what looked like a subway entrance. "Down!" Ba shouted. They rushed down the stairs, the heavy roar of the creature chasing them. But the moment they reached the bottom platform, the entire tunnel flickered like a glitching screen. The world wavered, colors drained, sound warped. Then a voice echoed. A voice neither of them recognized. A voice that sounded like someone speaking from the far end of time. "You were not meant to turn the page yet." Xiao Zhan froze. Who said that? But instead of an answer, a train materialized out of thin air, its surface covered with moving symbols and flickering lights. Doors slid open silently. Ba swallowed. "I'm guessing we're supposed to get on." "You guess." Xiao Zhan stared at him incredulously. "That thing is still chasing us." As if summoned by the words, the creature's roar shook the tunnel. Ink seeped down the stairs, crawling like a living flood. The train lights flickered urgently. Yibo grabbed Xiao Zhan's hand, tightly, and pulled him inside. The doors slammed shut just as the ink crashed against them. For a moment all was silent. Then the train lurched forward at impossible speed, rocketing through a tunnel that looked less like metal and more like the inside of a pen, walls dripping with words, sentences glowing like neon streaks as they sped past. Xiao Zhan finally caught his breath. This isn't a script. It's a world that's writing itself. Yibo nodded slowly. And we're the characters. They stood side by side, steadying themselves against the vibrating floor. The tunnel grew brighter until it was nearly blinding. When the train finally screeched to a stop, the doors opened. But instead of a station, it opened into a massive library. A cathedral-sized place where books floated through the air like constellations, pages fluttering like wings. Giant pillars held up a ceiling painted with shifting scenes. Scenes of them. The moment they stepped out, torches ignited along the walls. A silhouette emerged from behind a bookshelf. The same hooded figure they met in the diner. But this time, he lifted his head more clearly, revealing a face cracked with ink, half-human, half-smudged words. "You've reached the archive," he said. "The heart of the last script." Xiao Zhan took a breath. "Tell us how to finish it." The figure stepped closer, shadows trailing like spilled ink. "You don't finish the last script," he whispered. "It finishes you." And somewhere in the library, a massive book slammed shut, echoing like a final warning. If you like this continuation and want part 2, just tell me. And don't forget to tell your YouTube viewers at the end. Backhand index pointing right if you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo universes.